Hi, my name is Julian Alordi. I'm producing this video for course 634 in the Education Master's Program at St. Mary's University in Minnesota. The title of my capstone paper is The Science of Learning in Secondary Schools, Instructional Design with the Brain in Mind. A bit about me: I've spent 10 years in secondary schools teaching in LaSallian Catholic schools in California since 2015. I have 20 plus years in education in total. I began teaching elementary school straight out of college. I currently teach at Justin Siena in Napa. I teach religious studies. Before that, I served 8 years at Christian Brothers High School in Sacramento, where I was a teacher and an administrator. I have two daughters. I love music, and I've always been fascinated by the brain, especially as it influences human development. So, why cognitive science in education? I believe that the science of learning needs more attention. I think that students could benefit from teachers that intentionally receive professional development that helps them understand how the brain works and learns. And in my 20 plus years um, of teaching experience, I have never received any on the job professional development training that intentionally teaches me how the brain works and how the brain learns. That's a lot of missed opportunity. I believe that cognitive science helps us achieve the desire to serve all students. I believe that cognitive science applications in the classrooms can be another chapter in the toolkit that teachers have available to them. And I think that there's a lot of ground to cover here in terms of interpreting, analyzing, synthesizing the research in order to make cognitive science applicable in classrooms, particularly from where I'm concerned is secondary school education. So here's some goals. I think we need to expand our current understanding of how cognitive science can serve secondary class education. I think we need to expand the framework that's available, meaning that I think a lot of people associate cognitive load as being one of the most, ubiquitous tools that has been informed by cognitive science. But there's many different tools and principles out there that we can utilize in the classroom to in isolation or in combination. They do work together. Another goal I set out to accomplish in this capstone project is to root out misconceptions. So-called neuromyths abound in education, and these myths really do create harm in the classroom, and they create an opportunity for teachers to become closed in their mindset. So here we go. My driving question is, how can cognitive science be implemented meaningfully into secondary classroom educations? And then my subtopic questions are, what is cognitive load theory and how is it related to other practices informed by cognitive science? Question 2 covers, in what ways do interleaving and retrieval practice increase learning outcomes for all students? And question 3, as an area for further research, how does peer instruction and learning or collaborative learning utilize cognitive science principles? So, big takeaways. Cognitive science is complex as the human brain, and easily misunderstood. It's easy to take um, a finding from within cognitive science and apply it to multiple different settings without capturing the nuance of how and why that discovery was made. It's very difficult to transfer exact um, research-based outcomes in a variety of classroom settings. Cognitive science principles are intertwined, meaning they interact with each other. The tools can and should be used together, and we should consider their impact throughout our instructional design. Quality educational research is key. It seems like conceptual frameworks abound as it concerns cognitive science, and synthesis papers abound, but quality research, especially quality research focused on secondary education, is limited. This feeds right into my conclusions about the quality and credibility of research. I found that the quality of research in this area is limited, and the sample sizes are too small, and the samples are limited, and that makes it difficult to transfer what I read in research to secondary schools. However, there are systematic approaches out there that do create, um, a summary of the ideal template for trying to bring in cognitive science into the classroom. There is a wealth of credible sources for this material, but many of the sources seem to be focused in the domain of cognitive science and heavily focused on the science of learning. And there is an absence of the bridge between the science of learning and the art of teaching that is meaningfully informed by cognitive science. So my applications and recommendations, here's the first set. In terms of implementing cognitive science principles in secondary classrooms, I believe that applying interleaving instead of blocking has value in my classroom, but especially in concept-based or skills-based classrooms in the math and sciences. Using retrieval practices regularly is incredibly helpful. Short, low-stakes quizzes and assessments, self-tests, enable students to, you know, lean into these cognitive science principles and also prepare themselves for higher stake assessments that come up later on in the semester. Related to interleaving, but instead is spaced learning instead of cramming so much information into a lesson. I've already put this into practice in my classroom this week. I have my goals, they're chunked out, and I make sure that over the course of a 75-minute period, give students a lot of time to absorb the core takeaways, the learning goals of the session, rather than trying to buzz through a slideshow as quickly as possible. Give students time to chew on things, marinate, let it really sink in. Recommendation number 2 about managing cognitive load. Always of value, especially in my classroom, which has a variety of different learners of different skills. Avoiding overwhelming the working memory. Using scaffold to complete complex tasks. Breaking lessons into chunks to match cognitive limits. These are all things, some of which I already do. Others, I can really defend the choices that I'm making to scaffold or break lessons into chunks based on the research that I've uncovered in this assignment. So applications and recommendations number 2, peer and collaborative learning. Incorporating peer instruction and collaborative learning is something that I started doing last year, and this assignment helped me really develop an understanding of how this does serve cognitive load, science principles, particularly this idea of shared cognitive load, how we can kind of offload the cognitive load for an assignment onto members of our group. And structured group work, I think that this might be a missed opportunity in my classrooms, which I hope to put into place over the course of the next year. And then defining success based on learning science means that we really should move away from grades and see if it's possible to build into our systems ways to assess retention, problem solving, critical thinking, and the ability to to work collaboratively. If we can measure growth in those areas, that might be so much more valuable than grading students based on their mastery of content, to be completely honest. Uh, Recommendation number 5, equity and access. Using the strategies that are covered in the CLR, I hope that we can support all learners, especially students with limited working memory. Okay, so what have I learned from these two courses, which really go hand in hand? In EDMA 630, I learned a deeper understanding of how to critically evaluate educational research and apply research-based strategies. In EDMA 634, I strengthened my ability to interpret and apply student data. And taken together, I understand that data is a powerful tool and I must advocate resources and continuously improve my teaching practice as an individual and as a member of a department. So I'd like to use what I've learned in these two classes to really, refine my own capacity as a teacher, but also help move the needle in terms of directing my department towards a common goal. I think that is something I'm really looking forward to. Okay, confirmation and discovery. I learned here that every bit of research is guided by and measured by process and method. Study design and methodology create a sense of order and purpose and affirm the credibility of the research that is being examined. In my own writing process, I learned that clarity and structure is important. I tend to just almost have a stream of consciousness kind of style of writing, which makes my writing difficult and the sentences long and hard to follow. So the most important part of writing is the planning, note-taking, outline, and revising. And that's my presentation. Thank you so much for listening.